This is Verneer for Card Runners, and I'm going to be making a 50 no limit video on stars. Some of the things that I'm going to talk about are playing against short stacks who often have a MTT or sit and go mentality when playing their hands, where they're going to be shoving with any kind of ace, any kind of pair, any kind of like high cards, and just all sorts of crap. So um, a lot of people get frustrated when playing short stacks because they lose flips, but I think more often than not, I'm going to be coming in and um, being a favorite when playing against a short stack, and uh, win or lose, it's just variance. But I'm going to be making a lot of Sklansky bucks and playing short stacks in the long run. So, and I'm also going to talk about the benefits of having a loose image, where it really simplifies a lot of your decisions post flop because people are going to be calling you down super light and people are going to be trying to bluff you off a lot of hands, and you're just going to be able to call down a lot more if you have a loose image. And finally, I'm going to do some non-ABC plays, which at first might seem really spewy, but um, they're actually going to be profitable in ways, not just directly in the hand, but in ways afterwards where they build kind of an image for you. So these non-ABC plays, it's just something you might want to consider putting into your game, and more often than not, it's usually going to be a high variance play, but just something to be thinking about. All right, let's get to the tables. So I'm at the latter stages of a six-person sit and go to talk about the mentality of a short stack. And then we're going to talk about what kind of cards and how we want to generally approach short stacks when we're playing them at the table. So the first thing you'll realize is a lot of these short stacks are coming from the sit and go or multi-table tournament mentality, where they're not going to be folding any kind of pocket pairs. Very seldom are they going to be folding aces. They're not going to be folding high cards. And more often than not, they're more than willing to get it all in and try to gamble it up. So the way to combat that is to have a pretty good understanding of odds and probabilities. And we're going to use that to put them on some kind of a range, which usually is very, very wide, and then to get value out of that range. So we're going to talk about basic probabilities later on, but very seldom any two cards which are not a pair, like Ace King, versus any two cards which are also not a pair. They're considered live. So even a hand like Ace King versus a hand like 2-3 is I'm kind of donking it up here. So a hand like 2-3 still has a 30% chance to win against a hand like Ace King, if all the money goes in pre-flop. So more often than not, if the stacks are short enough, you're going to have odds to call with just a huge wide range of hands. And a lot of these players that come from sit and goes and switch over to cash games are also going to be coming from that mentality. So another thing that another benefit of playing some of these sit and goes, well, first of all, you develop a much better idea of what kind of ranges become profitable against what kind of short stacks. The second thing that you do is you start kind of accepting the natural variance of the game. A lot of cash game players just hate losing, and they hate losing any kind of pair, or I mean, they hate losing pretty much any kind of hand. But against short stacks, well, when you're playing these sit and goes, just so many crazy beats happen, like right here. So I just lost to a 3-outer on the river, and you learn to deal with that because you realize that when you go down to the river, and here I've got very little money left, and there's all kinds of odds, and hopefully I have two live cards. So I've got 10-6, and hopefully if he doesn't have an overpair, or if he doesn't have, okay, so he's got an overpair, and I'm a pretty big dog. but I could still get runner here, and no more. So, uh, well, that's the worst kind of situation that I could have been in. But against anything else, I still probably have a 30% chance to win. And given all the money that's in the pot, it's not a bad call. So by messing around with these kind of tournaments, you kind of accept the variance associated with poker, which a lot of, like I said, a lot of cash game players have a hard time doing that. And you learn to pick up on some basic probabilities and statistics. So when I had that guy in the dominate position with the ace jack, he still had, I think, roughly a 30% chance to win. So, and you learn to kind of get inside the head of a short stacker. So all these things we're going to carry over into the
All
cash
right,
game.
so here we are at two tables of 50 no limit. And as you can see on the table on the right, there's three significant short stacks. So we're going to adapt kind of a similar strategy to the one of the tail end of a sit and go against the short stacks. And our range for calling them is going to increase dramatically. And our range for just hands in general that we're going to play against them is going to increase dramatically. So sometimes this person's an unknown, and the hand before, he seemed to have floated this under the gun raiser and taken the pot down. So I think he's going to be calling me pretty liberally if I was raising. So I'm not going to look to play this. The A7 hand has very little value post flop, and I'm not going to try to push him off it because I think he's going to be calling a lot and then he's going to be floating me a lot. So I'm not looking to play this hand against him. And I'm assuming that these guys are going to be, I'm assuming they're going to be, the short stacks are going to be limping a lot of pots and are going to, I'm just going to lead out here, and if they don't have anything, they're going to fold. I'm going to be able to take it down. And so he calls me. He's a short stack. He could have a 9, which is not going to fold. He could have a flush draw, which I'm ahead of. He could have a 7 with a better kicker. So I'm not looking to push him in of any kind of a hand because I think if I bet here, he shoves with a huge part of his range. So I'm just looking to play a small pot, and I'm just happy to take it down. And he had a gutter, so. But I'm just not looking to play a big pot against him. So that's one of the things about short stacks is they're very liberal about hands they're going to be calling with. So if I had top pair against a short stack, I'm probably felting it just because as you could see, like they'll call with a gutter, they'll call with two overs, they'll just call with a huge range. And here I'm in position with a suited ace. Um, so I've got an early limper. It's just going to be profitable for me to be raising this hand and isolating the limper to pick up the blinds. And even if I don't pick it up pre-flop, I'm going to be able to continuation bet a lot of flops and take it down. So there's a flush draw out there, but there's a high card too. And with I think continuation betting into two people is is a lot more stronger than continuation betting into one because once you're continuation betting into two people, people just tend to give a little bit more credit. And here I'm raising this king jack suited, and I will definitely be playing it for stacks against the short stack because he's going to be shoving here with a wide range. So short stacks will often like to limp shove, and that's what's happening here. And as you kind of figure out later on in sit and goes, this hand's almost always live and probably ahead of what he's shoving with. He could be shoving with an ace here, but I'm just looking to pair one of my cards. And sometimes king jack is just going to be good in and of itself. Um, so yeah, so like he'll shove with just any kind of ace rag, and that's fine. Um, I'm not that much of a dog to him, and um, I don't mind getting some action. All right, so this guy is going to be this is another good flop for me to be raising. Well, one of the things that's going to start happening now is by raising a lot and by betting a lot of flops, I'm going to create a very loose image. Um, except this guy is leading into me. He's playing 19, 10. He, let me see. I could certainly try to raise him here and try to push him off the hand with, let me think how much is in the pot. But I think right now I'm just gonna let it go. And the short stack is raising all in again. And with a 17-12 guy re-raising me, it's an easy fold. But if the short stack was to re-raise me all in, or just to raise me all in, I would definitely call him with sixes because I feel like they're ahead of his range, which in this case was an ace jack. So I would definitely have the right. I'd be priced in. I would be ahead of what he has, and um, basically it would be a coin flip when with all the dead money in the pot and being a favorite. It would be a profitable long-term play. So against short stacks, often I will play any two cards, which like high card. I shouldn't say any two cards. High cards are good, and pairs are definitely good, and high aces are definitely good too. But sometimes I'll just go all in against a short stack with any kind of an ace because they're going to be shoving high cards themselves. They're going to be shoving like 10-9, um, just all kinds of cards. All right, this is a very good connected flop. Normally, this would be an excellent flop to bet at because if he doesn't have a club or a king, he's going to be going away. So it's a scary flop for me, but it's also a very scary flop for him. So very coordinated flops like that are very good flops to bet at. But given my image, I think where I've been raising a lot and I've been folding a lot too, it's I'm gonna have to start factoring my image into account soon. We've got a min raise from a short stack. Now, a hand like ace, like 8-2 is plays very poorly against a short stack. So the odds of flopping a flush draw are like 11%, and the odds of flopping a flush are uh, like 2%. So a lot of people like suited cards, but the odds of them hitting anything on the flop are just very, very low. So we want to avoid suited cards, which I mean, first of all, you shouldn't be playing this anyhow, unless you're the aggressor. I mean, there's definitely times when you're on the button and the blinds are really passive where you pick up ace two that you can pop it up, but for the most part, we want to just avoid them. And this is eights are definitely a premium hand against short stack, which hopefully we can get it all in. If he calls, I'm still going to be felting a lot of flops. So yeah, so we're most definitely ahead of his range. He probably has like, but we're also probably also flipping. That's not a good flop for him because aces are definitely, or it's not a good flop for us because aces are definitely such a part of his range. And so that's exactly what I'm talking about is this philosophy of limping and then just like shoving with any two cards. And a lot of people get very frustrated about short stacks. They get frustrated with the fact that short stacks keep on doubling up off them. But here we had a really profitable play. Um, this might seem kind of spewy, but this guy posted out of position. I'm not going to give him much credit for a hand, so I'm just going to try to. So some people, if he shoves here, I'm definitely calling, but some people will just post out of position and they'll raise, and it's just like them trying to establish themselves at the table. So he could have anything. So I always have a little bit of fold equity, and oh my God. Um, and he actually had a legitimate hand there, and that's fine. But what I'll see more often than not is somebody will post out of position, and then will do exactly what he did. He'll like raise there and just try to take the blinds down. So they're impatient. Somebody like that is impatient. They sit down. They're like ready to gamble, and because they posted that out of position, like they don't want to lose that money, so they're going to raise. And more often than not, everybody around them is going to fold. But I've seen this often enough to know that they just sat down. So how good can their cards be? So usually they're just doing to pick up the blinds and start. It's like their free ticket into the game. So I'll often repop them. And when you do repop them, in this case, when I repopped, I priced myself into call. And this, I had two life cards, and that's another thing. Um, Although my range is very, very wide, it's I figured I probably have life cards. Um, so this is a kind of a marginal situation. Completing with A7, but it's 25 cents to play a pot of $1.50. So I'm getting like 5 to 1 on my money, and uh, because I know this guy's really, really loose, if I hit anything, I'll be able to take it away. But I also know he's going to be calling with a huge wide range, so I'm probably not going to be leading out with garbage. So if I hit an ace, I would definitely block or bet, or if I hit a seven, I would definitely block or bet. But as played, this flop has just so many draws on it. It's kind of spewy to be leading out on it because he's going to be calling me like he's not going to be folding any kind of pocket pair. He's not going to be folding any kind of draw on there. That's just the way he's going to play it. Um, so yeah, so I think we've gotten it in good against the short stacks. Um, pretty much every time. I'm trying to think of the first hand. Well, the first hand I was actually dog. It was the ace eight versus king jack. But I mean that's just a short stack mentality. And as you play some sit and goes, um, you'll get a good understanding of uh, what kind of cards these players find profitable, and um, you'll get an understanding of just the shove mentality. They're limping and you're raising them up. So it's almost like the FU shove, like what? Why are you raising me? I just want to see a flop. So now they shove. It's like their defense mechanism. Um, so that's why just a understanding of mathematics and just how different hands play against each other. So a hand like um, I think like 2-3 offsuit has like 30% equity against a hand like ace king suited. Um, I'm pretty sure, and it's just you realize that after a while you're just priced in to play a lot. Now, while I am going to be isolating this guy with just a huge range, king six offsuit just plays very poorly after the flop, and he's not the kind of guy that seems to want to fold. So I want to be isolating him with hands like I think with kings like king nine and up, queen eight and up, like high cards just play very well against short stacks. Um, Hands that play pretty poorly against short stacks are like low suited connectors, like 4 5 suited, et cetera, et cetera. So here I haven't done much, even though I don't think these guys are at all concerned about. I don't think these guys are going to be very concerned about my image, and this is just a little bit too low, especially offsuit. So I know this guy's going to be calling me a lot, and I know he's going to be floating me a lot, but he's not very aggressive. So if he was a little bit more aggressive, I would definitely tighten up my range. But because he's not very aggressive, I'm going to just take him to Value Town liberally here. That's not a bad card for me. It's not a great card, but it's not a bad card. I'm just going to continue betting. I'm probably going to bet a little bit less to encourage him play. That actually is a bad card for me because he could be calling with a second pair is a very common thing for him to call. So I'm gonna put forth a little blocker bet. I don't think he's sophisticated enough to realize that it's a blocker bet. Um, and what the blocker bet will accomplish is it's going to be basically I'm dictating the price for the showdown. So if I check there and he bets pot, um, yeah, he could certainly have a missed flush draw, but um, it just puts me in a really awkward situation. So I would much rather set the price for the showdown with a blocker bet. If he raises me as passive as he is, I think it's definitely a fold. And I actually, when the 9 hit, I actually figured we were chopping because um, we were chopping, but I didn't want to get pushed off my hand. That's hence the blocker bet. So it's good to know that he's not going to be re-raising aces pre-flop. So this is one of those situations where he played the hand not optimally and yet got reinforced. So his bad play there is going to get reinforced by the fact that he won. So he's going to remember that as here's another situation where just the ace, the guy has an ace and just goes all in. And we're starting to get a little bit shorter, a little bit fewer short stacks. That's too bad. But that also means that we're going to open up our range because I know this guy's tight, and I'm not sure. I don't know too much about this guy, but um, until I know better, I'm just gonna start. I'm gonna start being a little bit looser. So back to what I was saying about his bad play there being reinforced. So he's going to remember the fact that he played aces passively and he won. And if a guy like that ever tries to move up in limits, he's just going to get torn apart. Um, he's going to lose a lot of value, but by playing his aces passively. I mean, there's definitely times when you should be playing aces passively, but for the most part, you should just be popping them up for value to avoid getting sucked out on by just all kinds of goofy two pairs. And I actually did notice that this guy was short, and this was my mistake. I probably should not have played 9-6 suited against the short stack, but he he's a very passive short stack. So it's it's kind of a bad situation where he he's a short stack, so he's paying a lot of blinds, but he's also um, not very aggressive. So he's being blinded. Well, he's just being blinded a lot and not playing a lot of hands. I think like an effective short stack, like some of these guys that buy in short, I mean, they're just looking for, like I said, any ace, any pair, pretty much anything, and they're just looking to like shove it and double up or leave. So except for this guy, we've got um, we're starting to get some normal stacks at the table, so we're going to change our strategy a little bit. And against somebody who's 19-14, even though I expect this guy to be calling a lot, against the 19-14, I'm just going to be raising a lot of things on the button. So I noticed I was playing 50 no limit on full tilt the other day, and I noticed that just there's a lot of players that are like 19-14, 17-13, very, very tight players. And some of them were almost nitty. This is a hand that I don't want to be out of position against this guy because he's going to be calling a lot, and the hand like 2-5 suited just does not flop well against his range, which his range I'll say is like 82 cards. So I'll just let it go. But I noticed that there were people that were very, very tight and like kind of like this, like 17-13, 18-14, and the one of the ways to and I imagine a lot of you guys that are watching this video are have that tight aggressive strategy. And like right now I'm running at 34-30. So one of the ways that I combat those kind of players, or one of the ways that kind of looser players take advantage of these more tight aggressive players is where we're just playing a lot of smaller pots and um, basically stealing out a lot of blinds and taking down a lot of things with continuation bets. And more often than not, we're not going to have a hand. But we're also going to be able to get away from a lot of hands more easily. And when we do hit a hand, it's usually going to be a little bit more disguised. So Here, this guy min raises under the gun. I don't know anything about him, but I think that tens are. This is really, really marginal. But just because he's min raising doesn't mean that I've got I've got the I've got a premium hand for the most part. And if he's got me beat, he's gonna let me know right now. But there's too many scare cards can come on the flop to kill my action. I would just rather have aggression. Um, if he re-raises me there, just a min raise under the gun and a re-raise, it just crushes my range. So basically, at best, I'm hoping he has ace king. More often than not, he's gonna have a big pair. Not even jacks. He's gonna have queens and up. So in that situation, if he was to re-raise me there, I would definitely have folded. So I think this limit, I think 15-0 limit is very profitable because it's filled with people that are play really really loose like this guy, and the way to play against this guy is like when I actually do hit a hand, I'm gonna be able to value bet, uh, just value bet him really well, and filled with these tight guys who are gonna be folding a lot and are gonna get blinded off a lot. This is if this was suited, I would probably raise it, but Queen 10 just does not play well post flop. So in early position, I'm just gonna be folding it. And I'm really tempted to call here, but since I'm out of position, I'm just gonna let it go. If I was on the button, I would definitely call. And if I knew that this guy was calling, then I would definitely call too, because then I'm in a four-way pot. So one of the advantages of, um, I guess one of the things that Brian Rue talked a lot about when I sweated him a long time ago is this idea of a three-way pot and a four-way pot. So if it's a continuation betting into two other people is usually a good idea because you're showing a lot of strength by continuation betting into two people. So it's a lot harder for one of them to try to bluff you. On the other hand, continuation betting into three people with air is usually a really bad idea because more often than not, one of them is going to have you beat. Um, so you know, when somebody continuation bets into, I'm actually going to raise it to like $3 because I think he's going to be calling pre-flop anyhow. So I just want to go and get some value now. Um, and I don't think he's aware of like the size of my bets or things like that. And this guy posted out of position. So just four-way pots are good because they protect my hand. Because it's a lot less likely that anybody's gonna try to bluff me. And I was actually gonna isolate here, and no, I'm not gonna do it. So on this kind of a flop, I'm gonna be going all the way against this guy, and I'm actually gonna I guess I'll just do a standard bet. He's either gonna continue or he's not gonna continue. So I guess that's one of the advantages of raising the $3 before the flop with a premium hand like that is a guy like that he's just gonna be looking to call. So he's looking down, and I'm trying to think. There's I've been doing some thinking about just the kind of levels that the levels of poker thinking a lot of these players on, and I'm trying to think if this guy's a level one player or a level zero player, and I think he's he's definitely not a level two player. Like I don't think he's at all thinking about like what my potential range can be. Um, he's looking at the board and he's looking at his cards. So a level zero player is somebody who might not even be aware of the rules of poker, and they're like they've got two cards. Um, this might actually play pretty well post flop against him even out of position, and he's just looking down. He's got two cards, and he's not really sure how they hit on the flop. So he's going to be continuation betting with just a wide range. But I actually think he might be like a level one player. Uh, I've got a gutter, obviously, so mostly just betting the scary flop. Um, And here I'm gonna try to pick this up pre-flop. This the middle pair pairing is always just a bad idea. And I actually wonder if I can bluff him. I'm gonna bet. I'm trying to think of what I can push him off of. So, I guess we'll find out what kind of a level thinker he is. I mean, he should call me with a king here. All right, so he's wow, he's pocket aces again. That's crazy. Um, Usually bluffing an unknown is a really bad idea, but here I was um just the way he played the hand. I I mean, obviously I couldn't put him on aces. I didn't even think he had a king. I think he would have played the king a little bit more aggressively. So, but yeah, but I mean, he kind of seems like a level zero thinker where he's just looking to call and then see what the flop brings, and just somehow at the end he's ended up with money twice against me with pocket aces. But yeah, I still think a hand like 9-10 plays pretty well against him. Of course, it was kind of silly for me to try to bluff him there, but I actually think I was actually thinking he has something like just some kind of a just a really funky draw, which he's just looking to like call once on the flop and try to fold in the river. Like I think if he has nothing, he's folding the river, but I mean obviously he's not folding pocket aces there. And so the same situation, there's a four-way pot. We're gonna call and see a flop. So we flopped a flush draw, we flopped a combo draw. Any kind of eight will give us a straight, and any kind of club will give us a flush. So now we also paired. I think I don't like betting here again because I think if I bet here, I think at least one of these guys has a jack, and I think a jack's not going anywhere. So I'm actually looking to keep this pot a little bit smaller. I'm definitely gonna call now because I think a six is good too. So I think a six is an out. I think I think this guy might have a jack. He might even have two pair. He might actually have two pair, but I think I have enough odds. I think I have direct odds definitely to call, but I also think I've got some implied odds. So now, now this is one of the situations where my line was just very much clearly a draw, and some people would try to bluff in this situation, and so my draw missed, and they would just try to bluff and take it down. But I think he's got like a jack, maybe like a he might have like a jack eight for a combo draw himself, or um, he might have like a nine eight or something like that. So yeah, I mean he's not folding a jack, and it was like $3 for me to try to play that pot and just give up on the river. I think betting the flop is correct there, just because if I do hit, I want there to be money in the pot, and I mean unfortunately I missed. So my two biggest losers right now are those two hands where the guy had aces. Here, this guy's he's limping and he's checking to me, and I'm just gonna be betting anything because I figured if he has anything, then he'll probably bet this flop. We're shorthanded here, which I don't mind. I think for somebody who's loose and aggressive, the shorthanded games are where we have more of an edge because a lot of really tight players have a hard time adjusting to uh, like they fail to adjust their starting hand requirements against when the game goes shorthanded. So they start getting really frustrated, and for somebody who's playing pretty loose, we're just going to be picking up a lot more blinds. All right, so I finally hit a hand against this crazy guy. So now it's just a matter of I'm not really worried about that many draws. So I mean, it's definitely a dry board, but my hand is so strong here that I want to continue value betting it. And like we know, this guy's going to be he's going to be continuation. He's going to be continuing with a lot of hands here. So we're going to bet. I'm trying to think about how much I can bet to keep him in the hand, and I think I'm going to bet 1150. He's going to be calling maybe 1250, and that's fine. All right. So um, I don't know how strong he is. I could probably shove, but I think not shoving is a little bit stronger. Was I short? I'm trying to think of why. Okay. I probably should have shoved, but I think if I shove, he actually had top pair, so he played it really passively. I think if I shove there, there's like that psychological element of if if I shove there, I mean, it might be a little bit more scary to him. All right, this guy posted out of position, so I'm actually gonna squeeze here with my 710. This guy posted out of position min raise right off the bat. And I'm going to be continuation betting just a huge range of flops. All right, this is a pretty good flop for me. Um, all right, I'm going to bluff. Oh wow, looks like he has a queen. Oh man, that's awful. So this is another one of those situations where um, it's definitely a very unorthodox play, but a guy posts out a position and min raises, and it's another one of those situations where he I just can't give him credit for a hand there. So but I think you know I think plays like that are they're I mean they're absolutely wonderful for my image if any of these guys stick around and he left. So you could argue that it's 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 definitely not ABC poker, but I think it's a profitable play. Post flop is questionable. Post flop I actually thought he's just trying to bluff me. So post flop is definitely questionable, and against a short stack ace ten, I'm calling three handed. More often than not, I'm gonna have him dominated, and or at least be flipping. So I'm losing my races against short stacks in this video, which kind of stinks, but other times I'm gonna be winning them. So I mean that's just the variance associated with poker. And again, against a guy that's posting at a position, Jack 10 suited is ahead of his range, and I'm going to be picking up the blinds often. All right. So I'm raising a lot, and I should pick up a hand now. So it's gonna go bet, bet, bet. So as I was saying, um, as I was saying with that, I'm gonna continue betting. Well, let me finish my thought in here in a minute. All right, that's not a bad card for me. Um, he could definitely have a flush draw, but I think more often than not, he's got some kind of like weak king. He could have a flush draw. He could have some kind of weak king like king jack. I think king 10 he would have raised me at some point. I think there's value in. Let me think. I think I'm going to be missing value if I don't bet here, so I'm going to do like a little weak bet. And he shoves right off the bat, which sucks. Um, I don't think he's bluffing at this point, just the way the hand played out. Um, I mean, he could have a set, but uh, trying to think. I guess the question is, oh God. I mean, I'm just not going to be folding aces in this situation, especially given my kind of crazy image. All right, this is a hand that I would like to talk a little bit about later on. So somebody said others would like to play down here. I guess just talking about and just that I've been raising a lot. So another one of these another advantage of playing just kind of a really loose style is, for the most part, your overpairs are protected. So like with aces there, even though like the way he shoved made me think that if I'm playing a tight aggressive style and I'm shoved on the river like that, uh, an overpair is almost never good. But I think just the way I've been playing, I feel like if he had two pair or something else, I think he would have raised me a lot more. I think he would have raised me on the turn. Or if he didn't raise, he would have called. He would have taken a little bit more time to call on the turn. So the way he played it is he like snap called the turn, which is a as far as timing tells goes, it's an indicator of just of a weak of a weak made hand, like a bad top pair or like a middle pair or a flush draw. So it's like a weak made hand or some kind of a draw. And I'm ahead of both of those. And the thing is, like, the river didn't change anything. So then I put forth like a little blocker bet to get values out of like a king or a 10. And when you put forth these little blocker bets, then this guy also just won a big pot, so I think he might be a little bit more apprehensive about playing. So pay attention to when somebody wins. Um, this is marginal, but I'm gonna raise it. If somebody just won a big pot, they won't they they're a lot less they're a lot more apprehensive about playing. Um, so you could actually loosen up against them. All right, that's not a bad flop for me with just one overcard. And although this guy didn't see how crazy I was earlier, but he did see me show down pocket aces, so he min raises me here. I'm not sure what it means, but we're deep enough to where I um so he did make a comment about the fact that I'm not letting other people play. So he's definitely aware of my loose image. But I think my hand here acts only as a bluff catcher, and I think he could have, just given the way the action came down. I'm actually gonna give him credit for a hand. If he's bluffing me, that's fine in this situation. But I think the range of hands, the amount of time he actually has a solid hand here versus the amount of time he's bluffing is definitely skewed towards him having a hand here. It would just cost me too much to try to find out. So I'll just give him that. And I'll just let this go. Given my image, he's not going to be folding much to me, and this is just a hand that is going to be difficult to play post flop. So even though we've lost um, just about all the flips with short stacks, we're still running at a pretty good rate, and there's been definitely some um, s- um, well, we've lost a lot of flips, and the 10-7 hand I would like to talk to a little bit more later. Maybe that's a hand that I'll post to the forums because outside of this context, it's just gonna look like horrendous spew. both pre-flop and on the flop. But I'll talk about I guess some of the benefits of playing the hand like that. The biggest I mean the biggest reason is um, just any two random cards. So if you don't have a pair, um, you're only gonna actually hit the flop. You're actually gonna only pair your whole cards like 32% of the time. So if I'm the aggressor in the hand, then I'm actually going to be they're going to be missing the flop, like 60, 68% of the time. So I'm going to be able to re-raise, they're going to call, and I'm going to be able to take just a lot of things away on the flop. Once he min-raises me, I've seen this so much where um, I'm going to isolate here and take down the blinds. Well, once he min-raised me, I've seen so many people like bluff min-raise in that situation where they call pre-flop hoping to hit something, and this is just a little bit too weak, especially given my image in this guy's hand and this guy's eyes to be raising under the gun. So uh, given um, so a lot of people just don't play well in three bet pots. They'll raise, then they get three bet, and then their thinking is going to be, well, because like, what if I had a flop? Then I'm really going to get paid off, and they just don't want to fold. It's like three betting them is like a slap in the face. And so what they do is they call with the hopes of hitting a big flop. And they remember the times they've called with like 2-3 suited and hit trips and stack somebody. So it's one of those situations where their bad play is reinforced. I think this guy's playing so passive. I think I'm going to be able to take away a lot of hands on the flop. So he might fold pre-flop, and then I'll just take it down, or I might continuation bet the flop, and he'll fold. So against a really passive player like that, uh, uh, once we establish that he's pretty passive, raising him is, I think, is okay. So just, I mean, experiment a little bit about raising out of the blinds, especially non-premium hands, and just look to take hands down. But what I was saying about people's mentality in three bet pots, and this is especially true at some of the higher limits, is they call pre-flop with the intentions of like hitting this marvelous flop. And the truth of the matter is, most people miss most flops. So they miss the flop, and now so now the person who's the aggressor continuation bets, and let's say the flop is like low cards, and they're like, I'm sure he has ace king because that's the most common hand that people see re-raised. So they're like, oh, I'm just gonna be able to bluff him off ace king. So they start going crazy, and that's why you see so many people just donking away buy-ins in three bet pots. It's because they just have no they like panic, and they try to pull moves. So in this situation, I just the way I had the read on the situation is, um, I felt like the guy was just trying to pull a move on me right there, which is why I shoved. But that's a hand that I can talk a little bit more about later. Not only in terms of uh, like you know possible immediate profit, but also in terms of metagame and things like that. All right, I had an ace against this guy. Ace with a pretty good kicker, and I'm actually just gonna value bet him. Um, he min raises me here. It's a pretty safe board. I'm way ahead, way behind. I'm not gonna be folding it to him. There's some draws, but I'm definitely calling. That's not a bad card. Like 7-8 is definitely within his range, so he could be. And this is too connected of a flop, I think, to be betting into two people. So I'm just gonna check behind. Um, he could have a flush draw. He could have a lot of aces. I don't beat a lot of aces, but I'm actually just kind of happy to check it down. But given my image, um, I'll call at least one more time. Now, if he did in fact have 7-8, he just sucked out on me on the river. Um, but here I'm just gonna fold. This guy's so passive. So in fact, he had king queen, so he had absolutely nothing. And my more passive line, the reason I decided to take the more passive line is because it's a way ahead, way behind situation. So if he's um, there's a big chance that he's bluffing, and the reason that I think there's a big chance that he's bluffing is because the comment that he made earlier about letting other people play. So he is aware of the fact that I'm playing really loose, and a person usually when a person's playing really loose, they just don't have a hand. So so when I hit top pair against him four-handed and he min raises me, I have to assume that he's min raising me with a bluff there. Like it's not even it's at that point it's like yeah, he could be raising me with a range of cards, but I think to try to put him on a range there is is not the optimal thing to do. I think it's to think about how often is it just a straight up bluff. So I felt like his line and given the way this action went down, and especially given the fact that I folded those nines. He didn't know I had nines, but I folded against him in that three bet pot. Um, I've shown a propensity for folding, and I've shown a propensity um, for being really really loose. So I think he's going to be I just think he's going to be trying to bluff me a lot. All right, top two on a really scary board. I'm going to raise A for value, B to protect my hand. I've got to assume my hand is best here. Um, Now, this is one of those situations where um, it I've got to make a decision about. I think he has a flush draw, so I think there's big benefits in trying to protect my hand here. Um, it's one of those situations where you can try to check for pot control. So the odds of flopping a flush are like um, that's not a good card for me, um, and I'm happy to check it down here. All right, so yeah, so he did have kind of what I thought he had, which was a club, um, like a high club. I thought he might have had the ace and some kind of other combo draw, but all right, this is actually a pretty bad board for me to. So I know he's got a good propensity for bluffing. So this is a board that I'm gonna get check raised on a lot. So I will actually not continuation bet this flop. And he bets $2. Um, Part of me wants to raise him here because I just think he's got garbage. But um, hmm, part of so I think he's got garbage. So I guess my wanting to raise him outweighs the potential of just wanting to play a small pot and just give up on it. But I just felt like he had garbage there, so I will raise him on the turn. And I'm actually going to finish up this video. So there's some hands that I would like to talk a little bit more about, especially that King 10 hand, where it's a situation where I feel like he has something, but I definitely think that I've got the best hand. So it's a really scary board, and it's I think I think often you find yourself in situations where you're on a turn and you're not sure if you've got the best hand, and you've got to make a decision on whether you want to check for pot control or try to protect your hand. And I think I think more often than not, a lot of players just choose to check for pot control. And I think and then like a bad card hits and and it's frustrating. So I think there's definitely that's a part of the game that I think is pretty weak. It's kind of a weakness for a lot of players is turn play where you've got a hand like kind of like a marginal hand, and you've got that decision to make. This is just too weak, um, especially given how uh, mean this guy have played, and I'm not gonna get happy with it. And I'll play one more hand at this table. So with the king 10, I felt like a flush draw was. I felt like some kind of a combo draw was just a big part of his range, like a club and a pair or something like that. And seeing as I had top two, I definitely want to continue getting value out of those hands. So all right, I will do a poker tracker review here in a few minutes. So
All right, so here we are. We played really, really loose over 122 hands. We ran at 37, 30, 34, and I think part of that was just the tables were pretty passive, so we were just raising a lot more hands than I normally would at a more aggressive table. Our our one money when seeing flop was 45%. We had a really high attempt to steal blinds, and again, I feel like part of that. Well, the table on the right was shorthanded for a bit, which tends to skew these numbers, but I mean, we were still just raising a lot of hands, and our aggression factors was really high. One of the issues with being playing a loose aggressive style is your one money at showdown is often going to be pretty low because you're not going to be going to showdown as much. It, Today, um, because I was playing a lot of short stacks and uh, I was being called down a lot, it was my went to showdown was around 40%, which is really high. Normally mine is closer to 20, but again, that's just kind of the way the numbers ran. And my um my one money at showdown is usually around 50, but uh, today I lost some flips here and there, and things didn't go my way. So positionally, well, I think these numbers are going to be a little bit skewed. So um, under the gun, we were still very, very tight. So we were raising a lot in later position, but under the gun, we were still playing a pretty tight range. So we opened aces, and it looks like that's the only hand that we played under the gun. We passed on marginal hands like queen, jack offsuit. So even if you're going to be playing a even if you're going to be playing a very loose style, you still want to make sure that you play your hands in position. Um, so in the cutoff, I think the most marginal hand that I played in the cutoff is um, that 9-10 offsuit. So both of these hands that I played in the cutoff, I felt like I could play profitably against the one calling station. And in both cases, he ended up having aces. So um, other than that, there's some interesting hands. The aces hand. Let me talk about that. Let me bring it up in playback mode. So we do our standard. We do a standard raise, and our image at this table now is pretty bad. So um, we get one caller, and the flop's a good flop for us because um, it's got some draws on there, and I expect him to be calling us with just a wide range on this flop. So we bet, and he calls, and the turn doesn't really change too much. I mean, Jack 9 got there, but I think most of its range includes some kind of a flush draw or some kind of a king, like a king jack or a king queen or um, maybe even like a king nine. Um, but when I bet the turn, he calls so quickly. So I think if he has two pair, or I think if he has a set, or um, the way he called so quickly made me think that he didn't have quite a made hand just yet. So he had something that he either had like a weak made hand. When I say a made hand, I mean like a two pair or better. Um, the he just saw it called so quickly, and the river's a blank, so I don't want to give a king or a ten or whatever he has. Um, I think he's going to be checking a lot of things behind, so I want to get value out of those hands, and the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to bet, which in this case was uh, I thought was like a kind of a smaller bet. It's a little bit less than two-thirds pot, but this is kind of like a blocker bet to get value out of a king. And when he shoved, um, he insta shoved, and at first I read that as strength, but then when I kind of played the hand back in my head, just the quick turn check just didn't add up. Um, and given my image, I was calling with aces, so he ended up having second pair there. Um, the other hand, um, where I lost. So my biggest loser that I had is this the squeeze play where a guy posts out of position, and he actually ended up having a good hand, but so he posts out of position and min raises, and I get a bunch of callers. So now, because he could have any two cards, and there's just a lot of dead money in the pot. I like to squeeze here with 10-7, and he calls me pretty quickly, and everybody else folds. So I accomplished what I wanted, which was effectively to isolate the guy who posts out of position. And the flop it's a pretty dry flop for me. So, uh, well, I mean, it's not a dry flop, but it's a flop where if he either has like a queen or I, I mean it's a flop that doesn't hit a lot of ranges. Let me say that. And I bet 750, and he effectively min raises this, and I've seen this done with air so much, where somebody's in a three bet pot and they don't know what to do, and they just end up min raising, and often, um, even though it doesn't seem like I have a lot of fold equity, I've seen people just fold here so often, and I thought that's what he was doing. He was just trying to pull some kind of a move on me. So I shove, and he ends up having top trips, which is just kind of too bad. But I think just the way this hand played out, if he just flag called me pre-flop, and more often than not, he's just gonna miss the flop. And even though he has ace queen, uh, I mean, what he should have done is he should have shoved pre-flop, but he flag called, and he's not gonna hit. Like 68% of the time, he's just not gonna hit anything on this flop, and like he's not gonna pair either of his whole cards, and I'm gonna be able to take the pot away, which um, including all the dead monies, that's going to be a profitable play more often than not. So it's definitely a high variance play, and I wouldn't always recommend it, but I just felt like in this situation, it was going to be a play that would be profitable. And then post flop, that was kind of my reasoning, and that was my read. So high variance play, but um, I think more often than not, it's going to be a profitable one. So. Um, all right, so those were kind of the interesting hands. So, I mean, I ran so bad at flipping too. Um, I just lost a bunch of small pots with flips, and um, and that's it. So I ended up winning 20 bucks on the session, which doesn't, I mean, it's like up or down, it's just the variance of the session. But I think the play was a lot more interesting. So, all right, this is Verneer for Card Runners.